Turns out the air we breathe may be slowly killing us.
Now that may seem pretty obvious standing right here, but across Britain up to 40,000 people die each year because of air pollution.
Since the Industrial Revolution, really, harmful pollutants in our air has been a major concern of society. Of course, now our towns and cities aren't caked in factory smoke, but our air is still far from safe.
In this documentary, I try and find out how dangerous air pollution actually is today. I speak to the people campaigning to try and clean it up, and also confront the government officials responsible.
So you're satisfied with the report that you released?
Well, it's a consultation.
I'm less than optimistic about what I'll find.
But firstly, I wanted to properly understand this nebulous threat to our health. King's College London has appeared in the press a lot lately because of their research into air pollution, so I went to their Waterloo campus to speak to Professor Frank Kelly. He's been researching air pollution since the 90s, and yes, it was essential we spoke in this generic lab setting.
But there's been quite a lot of numbers thrown around about it. I've sort of one was that 40,000 people have been killed as a result of air pollution. But obviously this is quite hard to verify, and one of the studies you co-authored at King's it said that there was a weak evidence between mortality rates from pollution and a high exposure to it. So how do we know air pollution is actually killing us?
So we don't for sure. So no one died from air pollution on their death certificate. But on the other hand, I don't think anybody questions the fact that if you smoke for 50 years, that you have a higher chance of getting lung cancer.
Yeah.
But again, on a death certificate, you don't get died from smoking.
Yeah.
So the issue is one of how you come about with the evidence in the first place. And we know that if people live in more polluted areas for long periods of time, then their life expectancy is decreased. And that's a robust finding. The figure for the UK for the effect of too much pollution in respect to these tiny particles is equivalent to the loss of 29,000 lives a year, and then this additional 11,000 comes from the impact of this gas, nitrogen dioxide. So it's not a direct figure, we can't point to the individual who's died, but it is calculated in the same way as we calculate all public health risks.
Yeah, and so my follow-up question to that was, how big is the threat of air pollution then? Seems pretty big.
For the country, it's the biggest environmental problem we have. For Europe, it's the biggest environmental problem we have. If you go beyond Europe, you go into Asia, then it's just an enormous societal issue which they're trying to grapple with.
Right, yeah.
But then when I asked how well Britain is dealing with air pollution, the professor told me something quite worrying.
In Britain, what we're working to is the European Commission's air quality limit values. Now, for nitrogen dioxide, that is pretty good. It's exactly the same as the World Health Organization recommends, 40 micrograms per meter cubed. In respect to these other pollutants, these particles, either classified as PM10 or PM2.5, larger or smaller, then there's a big difference between what the World Health Organization recommends and what the European Commission has agreed. And we are meeting the legal limit values of the European Commission, but they're not based on health. So what we need to do is move more closer to the WHO values.
And what are they based on?
So even some of the limits we struggle to meet are well above what the World Health Organization recommends. But is the government planning to do anything about this? Currently, no seems to be the short answer.
On May the 5th this year, the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, also known as DEFRA, finally published their report on how to tackle air pollution in Britain. This was, however, after Britain's High Court legally ordered them to on April the 27th. Originally, DEFRA wanted to publish this report after the general election on June the 8th. But better late than never, right? Not exactly. Client Earth, the group that actually took the government to court, called the plans weak and incoherent. Sadiq Khan called them woefully inadequate. Oh dear.
What's more is this draft report is actually part of a wider open consultancy. So basically the government has said, we don't really have a plan, do you guys have any ideas?
So why the hell did it take the government so long to publish something so lackluster? Do they think this is some university essay you can just BS your way through and hand in at the last minute?
But it was tough to get answers. Originally, we wanted to make this documentary for Earth Day on April the 22nd, but our Prime Minister called a general election 4 days before this on April the 18th. Parliament was then dissolved on May the 3rd, and our politicians went back to their constituencies, all before DEFRA was even taken to court.
Nevertheless, Andrea Leadsom is still the head of DEFRA, and she has been since July 14th, 2016, so she has some serious questions to answer.
At first, I tried to email her, and I got an automated reply about the election, so I tried calling her constituency office several times, but no one even answered the phone. I tried contacting her via the Conservative Party, who patched me through, but again, no one even answered the phone. But that's when I saw she was to hold a constituency advice surgery on May the 12th, the only scheduled public appearance that I, a concerned member of Britain's air-breathing population, could find.
And that is why we're here in the town of Towcester. It is actually pronounced Toaster for the record.
I'm Gavin, a comms officer at South Northlands Council. I can officially tell you it is pronounced Toaster, not Towcester.
We're inside of Andrea Leadsom's constituency of South Northamptonshire because she's had very few media appearances since the dissolution of Parliament. So today she's holding a constituency advice surgery here at the local council. So we're going to go see what she's got to say about her department's latest report.
But we didn't want to interrupt actual constituents from scrutinising their representative, so we tried to team up with some. These two were actually from the NGO Friends of the Earth, and part of their visit was about air pollution. They were actually conducting their own tests about it.
Tell us about your research.
Well, we put up 4 nitrogen dioxide tubes at various points between road and the M1, and of which one was destroyed by vandals, but the other 3 have gone back to the laboratory, and we're currently waiting for results.
Okay.
They didn't have an appointment though, like us, and so were turned away. It was fully booked apparently, probably why they failed to mention the surgery on the council's schedule board. But was it busy? You tell me. This is the main waiting area, and as you can see, the only person there is this young chap, and he's actually a volunteer for Andrea and the Conservative Party. The whole council building was almost empty. Yet we were told several times that Andrea was fully booked and they selflessly didn't want to waste our time. But of course Mrs. Leadsom doesn't want to speak to the media. She's done all she can to hide from us. But now, mandated by the despicable rejection of Friends of the Earth, we were determined to speak to our ineffectual Minister for the Environment. So we dug in and set up recon. The surgery was scheduled from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m, so things did drag on while we waited. Even the cafe was closed. But eventually, when no one was even waiting, we decided to take a chance after one constituent left the room. The woman who turned the Friends of the Earth away tried to slam the door in my face, so I had to use my foot to keep it open.
So you're satisfied with the report that you released?
Well, it's a consultation, and it's very important that we get this problem tackled in short order. I'm really sorry.
Apologies.
As you know, I'm in the middle of a constituency surgery.
It's just because Sadiq Khan called it woefully inadequate, and I was wondering if you think it's personally enough, because there needs...
Consultation. It's a consultation, and therefore it's for people to respond to. I'm looking forward to hearing the responses. It's an incredibly important public health issue, and it's something we're determined to tackle. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much.
It's just because...
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, she was right about one thing though. As we said before, part of DEFRA's response to air pollution is just an open consultation, just like last year and the year before that.
I'm looking forward to hearing the responses.
Great. So she either doesn't have a bloody clue what to do or just doesn't want to risk proposing something politically unpopular. I think probably a bit of both. But what did the people of Towcester think of all this? Like in most news reports, we asked some total randomer in the street what they thought.
So, Mr. Duck, if we could just ask you a question about air pollution in Towcester. Do you think that it's healthy? And just like Andrea Leadsom, the duck flees into murky water.
This also got me thinking, what exactly should we expect our government to do to tackle air pollution? To find out, we went back to London and spoke to Client Earth, the group who sued the government. Turns out they've been battling them since 2010.
Yeah, so Client Earth has been calling for a national network of clean air zones, and what these would do is that they would help to take out the dirtiest, most polluting vehicles from the most polluted parts of our towns and cities. It's not enough to just deter these vehicles from entering the areas. You also really have to help people make that transition from, polluting dirty diesel vehicles onto much more cleaner forms of transport. So that could be through targeted scrappage schemes where you're helping people, trade in their old polluting vehicles for newer ultra-low or zero-emission vehicles, or possibly even for season tickets. To really make that transition. And we also need to see a lot more investment in infrastructure to help people generally use public transport, walking, cycling as well.
Do you have anything to say to Andrea Leadsom and DEFRA?
So from our perspective, whoever is in government next really has to take on what we see as not just their legal responsibility, but also their moral duty to ensure that people across the country can breathe safely, that they don't have to worry that their kids are growing up in polluted places, that their lungs are being damaged by air pollution. So whoever is in government next really has to take this problem seriously and deal with these illegal and harmful levels of air pollution in the shortest time as possible. And we look forward to seeing how they're going to do this, and we'd be more than happy to work with them on this as well.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. I think that's everything. So it really doesn't seem out of reach to expect clean air to breathe. But where does this leave us?
Now, this isn't a small problem with a quick solution, and I'm sorry to say we all need to play our part. Ride bikes more, eat less industrialized meat, avoid using the internal combustion engine. But I'm not expecting a miracle here. Any meaningful change also needs to come from our legislature. We need a strong and stable leadership, or at least a clear drive towards environmentally friendly policy. And as we've discovered, this is something that Andrea Leadsom and her predecessors at DEFRA have been lacking. So I'm not here to lecture you on who to vote for, but if you don't want to breathe air that slowly kills you, then maybe regime change is necessary. Even reform. Our current system, to be perfectly honest, is pretty ridiculous. Andrea Leadsom had her entire professional career in finance, and now she's expected to deal with the biggest environmental problem facing our country. Doesn't really make sense. So where does this really leave us? Well, air pollution is a problem that cannot wait, yet waiting is all we can seemingly do, at least until the general election. I speak to the people trying to campaign, blah, blah, blah. Let's do it. Recording? In this documentary, why can't I say that? In this documentary. Documentary, yeah. Okay.